The author of Mujmaul Tawarikh has quoted an extinct Sanskrit work, according to which the original inhabitants of Sindh were the Jats and the Medes. The above was mentioned in an article about Jats in the on a Punjabi defense on the Pakistani defense website. Is it true that the Jats and the Medes were the original inhabitants of Sindh? It all depends on the time frame that you're looking at. If you look at the last 100 years, you had a certain ethnicity that lived in Sindh, the so-called Sindhi people. If you look at the last 1000 years, maybe Jats lived there. If you look at the last 2000 years, maybe the Medes lived there. The Medes were a northern Iranian ethnicity. You go back 5000 years, these inhabitants of this region, which is now called Sindh, were the people of the Saraswati Sindhu civilization, the ancestors of most Indians today. So it depends on the lens with which you look. You look at the moon with your naked eyes, with your bare eyes, you will see a certain image of the moon. You take binoculars and look at the moon, you will see more detail about the moon. You take a high powered telescope, you will see actual rocks and stones and pebbles on the surface of the moon. It depends on what magnification you use and what lens you look at the moon with. Similarly, if you look at Sindh or Rajasthan or Gandhar and you want to know the original inhabitants, you have to ask yourself, what time scale are you referring to? If you want to talk about Gandhar, and if you want to look at the past 500 years, one would have to say that the Pashtuns are the inhabitants of Gandhar. If you look at the past 2000 years, the ancestors of the Pashtuns, the Rajputs, and their ancestors were the original inhabitants of Gandhar. You go back 5000 years, you had the Mahabharat era, possibly of that time, the Vedic or post Vedic Indians of that time, who were the inhabitants of Gandhar, and so on and so forth. So nobody sprang out of the soil. Human history is a history of migration. The best theory that we have as of today is the out of Africa theory, which says that about 70 or so thousand years before today, the out of Africa migration of Homo sapiens happened, and then we colonized eventually the whole surface of the planet, and India was the foundational zone, the original founders zone of the out of Africa migration. So that's how it is. So I would say that the original inhabitants of Sindh, for all intents and purposes, were the people of the Saraswati Sindhu phase of India's civilization that goes back about about 10,000 years before today. Right? I think the oldest evidence of this phase of our civilization is from Bhirana in Haryana, but you have other very ancient sites in Sindh and in present day Balochistan as well. So one can say with a very high degree of confidence and certainty that the original inhabitants of this region are the people of the Saraswati Sindhu phase of our Indian civilization. And that's the answer. Hopefully, it makes sense.